the alien gladiator said. If you defeat me, I will marry you. She didn't expect to lose. If you somehow defeat me, human, I'll bind myself to you. House, title, hand? All of it. The arena didn't just laugh. It howled. 10,000 alien throats roared at once, a storm of jeers crashing down from the stone tiers of the Crucible of Kharon. Sunfire from the twin stars bled across the sky, catching on banners, armor, and teeth. In the center of the scarred sand stood a single human in scuffed composite armor, dust clinging to his boots and dried blood cracking across his knuckles. Jace Rowan squinted up into the screaming stands, then back at the woman who just made the stupidest promise he'd ever heard. She towered above him, obsidian skin etched with faint luminous sigils, braids of silver-white hair braided through with black rings. Her armor was ceremonial more than practical, dark plates carved with jagged glyphs. An axe of dense black metal rested casually on one broad shoulder, as if it weighed nothing. High warlady Serakha of the Onyx Courts. The Obsidian Tempest. Undefeated champion of Kharon IX. Jace grinned through split lips. Your people really don't do half measures, do they? Serakha's eyes, gold, sharp, predatory, narrowed in interest. You find this humorous? I find it motivating. He wiped away a smear of blood with his wrist. Now I've got more than just medical debt riding on this. The crowd exploded again at the word debt. Holoscreens hanging above the arena dutifully flashed his account in blazing red. Rowan, Jace, balance due, along with the insignia of the corporate clinic that owned his contract. Every fight he won carved microscopic slivers off the number. Every loss added interest. He used to wear real armor once. Terran Fleet issue, with a flag that meant something sewn on the shoulder. That life evaporated the day his sister's lungs failed and the clinics on Mars quoted a price tag higher than any officer's salary. Now he wore patched, ring-scarred gear, and his flag was a barcode. To the crowds of Kharon IX, he was the Softblade, the human who didn't kill, the living punchline who refused to deliver finishing blows. To the debt collectors, he was an asset they hadn't squeezed dry yet. To himself, he was just a man who refused to let his sister die on a spreadsheet. Repeat your vow, boomed the announcer, voice amplified from somewhere high above, translated into a dozen tongues at once. Serakha rolled her shoulders, muscles shifting under carved armor. When she spoke, the whole arena leaned in. I, Serakha of Shattered Stone, High Warlady of the Onyx Courts, swear this: if this human defeats me in honorable combat, I will bind my oaths, and my future, to his. Silence, then shrieking pandemonium. Jace tipped his head to her. And if I lose? Her smile was all teeth. Then your med creditors receive your remains as partial payment. Generous, he muttered. How could I refuse? He lifted his sword, Terran steel reforged with alien alloy, plain but reliable, and pointed the tip toward her. Deal. The fight was scheduled for dawn. That left Jace one night to think about just how dumb he'd been. The Gladiator barracks beneath the Crucible were angles and concrete, dim strips of light flickering overhead. Air recyclers hummed. Somewhere down the corridor someone sobbed, somewhere else, someone laughed too loudly. Jace sat on the edge of his bunk, wrapping his hands in gauze already stained rust-brown. Each pull of the fabric tightened the familiar ache in his knuckles. You should have stayed quiet. The translator pinned to his collar rendered the buzzing clicks into flat Terran standard. Jace didn't look up right away. He finished the wrap, tugged the knot, then glanced at the insectid looming in the doorway. Mech's carapace was tarnished bronze, his forearms folded tight across his thorax. Whisker-like sensory fronds twitched over black, multifaceted eyes. You mean when she offered to marry me if I won? Jace asked. Yeah, sure, that was the problem. Mech skittered all the way in, door hissing shut behind him. You mocked a sacred vow in front of the Onyx Courts. Do you grasp what that means, soft-shelled mammal? Means I finally got a better incentive than don't die broke. Mech's mandibles clicked in agitation. It means if by impossible chance you defeat her, she will honor that vow. The bomb laws of Kharon are older than your species' attempt at space flight. Jace froze. You're serious? I do not joke with clients on their last night. Mech lifted a lower set of hands and began fussing with the straps on Jace's chest plate, tugging them tighter. She has never yielded. Never fallen. Never been touched by the edge of a weapon. Yeah, everyone keeps saying that. And still you agreed. What was I supposed to do? Jace shrugged. Say no? No thanks, terrifying war goddess. I'd rather just get chopped in half without the emotional complication. Mech stared at him in appalled silence. Humans are defective. Talk to my creditors. He leaned back on the bunk, staring at the cracked ceiling. On the inside of his wrist plate, nearly worn away, a patch of fabric was stitched under the polymer, a faded strip from his old fleet uniform. The Terran spiral, ghost pale now. He touched it with his thumb. Old habit. She's going to hit you once. Mech muttered, pacing now. Your bones will powder. Your blood will decorate the sand. The crowd will be very pleased. You really know how to pep talk a guy. Mech snapped his mandibles shut. After a moment, he rasped, quieter. You could feign organ failure. Humans are fragile. No one would question it. And then the clinic pulls my contract, sells it to someone nastier, and my sister's treatments stop. Jace's jaw hardened. Not an option. Mech's antennae drooped. You are statistically doomed. Story of our species, Jace said. We're good at ignoring statistics. The Onyx Citadel rose above Kharon's capital like a broken tooth, jagged spires of black glass, pulsing with faint inner light. On a terrace halfway up its side, under artificial moons and training lamps, Serakha danced with her axe. Servitor drones hovered at the edges of the polished stone, recording her movements for the feeds. Two living attendants, cloaked in dark blue, watched from the stairs, whispering behind their hands. He is small, one of them murmured. Thin. Oddly proportioned. He made you smile, my lady, the other added, trembling at her own boldness. Serakha pivoted through another spiral cut, bare feet sliding across stone, breath steady, muscles singing with remembered impact. She let the axe's weight, the edge, the balance become her world. He laughed in my arena, she said at last, voice carrying easily. Stared at the debt board and joked. Does that seem ordinary to you? Humans are feral, my lady, the bolder attendant offered. They cling to absurdity. Do they? Serakha's last strike ended in a vertical chop that cracked a hairline fracture into the practiced stone. Dust puffed up, swirling around her ankles. She let the axe rest, chest rising and falling a little faster now. Sweat made the sigils on her skin glisten. I have slain champions from 7 systems, she said. Brutes whose hearts pumped acid. Telepaths who could pluck fear from minds like threads. Not one of them smiled at me with broken teeth and talked of rent. The foreign word felt strange on her tongue. He made a spectacle. The quiet attendant whispered. The crowds adore it. The crowds adore blood. Serakha stared out at the glow of the city beyond the citadel walls. This is different. She had watched every scrap of footage the arena masters possessed of the human. Saw how he pulled blows at the last second, turning killing strikes into painful humiliations instead. How he walked away from fallen opponents, leaving them breathing mercy, in a place that had forgotten what it even looked like. Have you ever seen a creature refuse a finishing stroke? She asked. The attendants glanced at each other. No, my lady. Serakha rolled her shoulders. Somewhere beneath the carved armor and glowing tattoos, something restless curled and uncurled. A question she couldn't name. He thinks he can simply stop. She snorted. As if death is a switch. And tomorrow? The attendant asked softly. Serakha imagined the human's face when he realized she wasn't joking about the vow. Imagined his stubborn refusal to fall. Imagined his eyes when he finally did. Tomorrow, she said, lifting the axe again, we discover whether his species is as strange as their file reports claim. Kharon IX's suns rose like blades, sharp, harsh, white-hot. By the time their light speared down into the crucible, the stands were packed shoulder to shoulder with every species the city could vomit up. Holographic sigils burned along the arena walls, the jagged black of the onyx courts, the flickering red of the debt syndicates, the pale blue spiral of the Terran Freefront, some rebellion Jace had never been part of, slapped over his face anyway to make him a brand. In the tunnel beneath the stands, Jace flexed aching fingers inside his gauntlets. Armor plates settled into grooves with familiar clacks. Across from him, mechs scurried back and forth, checking straps and seals, antennae fluttering like nervous birds. "Stop fussing," Jace said. "You are about to anger a demigod with a mining tool." Mech snapped. "I will fuss if I desire. It's an axe, not a mining tool. The core of this planet was carved with less." Jace's laugh came out thinner than usual. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the weight of his sword at his side, the bite of fresh bruises under cloth. At the far end of the tunnel, the gate began to rise. Light flooded in, a blast of heat and sound. The chant started as a low rumble, then swelled into something thunderous. "Serakha! Serakha!" Mech fluttered his sensory fronds. "You could still fake a collapse. Humans faint constantly. It would be believable. Relax, Mech." Jace's heart hammered in his ears. "Worst that happens, I'd die horribly in front of a live audience, and you'd get a new client." "I do not want a new client. You are statistically entertaining." The admission was so grudging Jace actually smiled. He tapped Mech's carapace once with 2 fingers, then stepped toward the light. The arena swallowed him. Sand compressed under his boots. The roar of the crowd slammed into him like a physical wave. Drones buzzed overhead, lenses glittering. Holoscreens magnified his face until it hung enormous over the crucible, bruised and small and stubborn. "Challenger!" the announcer thundered. "Jace Rowan of Forgotten Earth, the Softblade of the lower rings." Boos, cheers, laughter. Wagers shouted, odds recalculated, coins flashed. Across the sand, another gate shuddered open. She emerged from shadow like a blade sliding free of a sheath. Serakha strode into the sun, axe held in one hand, armor plates catching the light. The sigils carved into her obsidian skin pulsed faintly. The onyx court's nobles, seated in their shaded balcony, surged to their feet at the sight. "High warlady Serakha, the Obsidian Tempest!" The arena went insane. Jace exhaled slowly. She was every bit as terrifying in person as the feed suggested. Taller than him by a head and a half, built like she'd been sculpted from armored stone and battle hymns. She stopped a few paces away, expression unreadable, golden eyes taking him apart piece by piece. "You came," she said. "Rent's due next cycle," Jace replied. "Figured I should show up to work." Her lips twitched. "Your handler was right. You find doom amusing. It's either that or cry," he said. "Laughter's better for the brand." A ripple of amusement spread through the lower tiers as the translators caught up. Even in the noble's balcony, a few tight mouths eased. Serakha planted the butt of her axe in the sand. Dust drifted up around the blade. "Once more for all to hear," she said. "If you defeat me, human, I will bind my oaths, my title, and my life to yours. This I swear by stone and star." Jace glanced up at the debt board out of habit. The numbers glowed a furious, impossible red. "If I win," he said loudly. "You realize you're signing up for bad jokes and cheap coffee, right?" The arena laughed. Serakha's smile sharpened. "If you win," she said, "I will learn." The gong struck. Serakha moved first. One heartbeat she was 10 strides away, the next, a blur of obsidian and white hair, axe slicing a humming arc toward his chest. Jace barely twisted aside. The blade grazed his cuirass, tearing a bright line through composite plating. The impact shoved him sideways, boots carving trenches in the sand. His lungs forgot how to work for a second. A roar surged from the stands. She didn't slow. The axe reversed, coming low, then high, each swing fast enough to whistle. He blocked once, twice, each parry detonating pain up his arms. His sword, sturdy, familiar, rang with protest. "You are slow," she observed, circling. "You're cheating," he panted. "Pretty sure you're using a gravity assist." She lunged, point of the axe leading this time. Jace dropped under it, rolled through the grit, and came up behind her, slashing for the gap under her right arm. Steel-kissed armor. Sparks flew. Her free hand snapped back like a striking serpent, catching his wrist. She twisted. Jace grunted, dropping to one knee as his shoulder screamed. "Sloppy," she murmured. Crowd noise thundered, chants, curses, delighted shrieks. This was what they'd paid for, an outclassed human being meticulously dismantled. Through the vertigo of pain, Jace caught a flash of motion. Her footing, just a hair too confident, weighed a fraction too far forward. "Yeah," he grunted. "You're right." He kicked sand. Hard. A spray of grit blasted up into her eyes. She flinched, so quick he almost missed it, but it was there. Her grip loosened. Jace wrenched his arm free, spun inside her guard, and slashed down at the exposed seam of her forearm. The blade bit. Not deep. Not crippling. But enough. Green-black blood welled from the shallow cut and dripped onto the sand. For a moment, the world stopped. Silence crashed down like a dropped curtain. Even the drones seemed to hover more still. Serakha stared at her arm as if she'd never seen it before. Her fingers flexed once, testing. A single drop of blood slid off and fell between them. Her gaze lifted to his. There was no rage in it. No humiliation. Just something sharp and newly awake. "You marked me," she said softly. Jace forced air into his lungs. "I'm told humans are good at leaving marks." A beat of quiet, then, shockingly, she laughed. Not the mocking bark from earlier, but something low and fierce and genuinely delighted. "Very well, Softblade," she purred. "Let us see how many more you can earn before you break." The fight turned. Not in the way the bookmakers feared. Jace didn't suddenly start dominating, didn't transform into some unstoppable whirlwind. He was still slower, still weaker, still one lucky mistake from decapitation. But the rhythm changed. Serakha stopped treating him like a formality and started treating him like something else. A puzzle. A challenge. Her swings became tighter, more controlled. No more showy flourishes for the crowd. Every step she took was measured, precise, tuned to him. Jace felt it, that subtle shift. It made the hairs on his neck stand up. He adjusted, because that was the one thing humans were actually elite at, being a pain in the ass when the universe thought it had them figured out. He forced his feet to move off-beat, stagger stumbling into openings he shouldn't have wanted, turning blocks into near misses that made the crowd shriek. He used the sand like another limb, kicking it, sliding in it, letting himself fall just to come up where she didn't expect. "You are dancing badly on purpose," Serakha accused between exchanges, breath finally roughening. "Best move I've got," he said, chest heaving. "We call it winging it. She snapped a kick into his thigh. His leg nearly went out from under him. "Your winging seems to involve absorbing significant damage." "Yeah." He winced. "That part's not my favorite." They crashed together again, axe against sword, shoulder against shoulder. At one point their faces were inches apart, both of them snarling, sweat and dust streaking their skin. "You could end 10 of my elites in this state," she hissed. "Why sell yourself to debt lords?" "Family discount," he grunted, forcing her axe aside by sheer stubbornness. "They don't take jokes as payment." She shoved him away, eyes narrowed. Something complicated flickered in that molten gold. Another flurry, strike, block, counter, retreat. He clipped her shoulder. She hammered his ribs so hard the world went white around the edges. Every breath turned razor-edged. He heard his sister's laugh in his head, the way it sounded before the coughing fits. Keep moving, he told himself. One more step. One more swing. Up in the noble's balcony, a dozen dignitaries leaned forward, their earlier boredom gone. They expected a slaughter. Instead, they were watching something Kharon hadn't seen in centuries. A fight that wasn't a foregone conclusion. The snap was almost delicate. One moment, his blade met her axe, metal screeching. The next, the sword shuddered in his hands and then simply gave up. The top third of the weapon spun away in a glitter of shattered alloy, clattering across the sand. Jace stumbled with the momentum, nearly impaling himself on what was left. The crowd lost its mind. Serakha stepped back, axe resting against her shoulder, chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Blood, hers and his, speckled her armor. A smear of bruise darkened one cheek where he'd landed a lucky punch. "Your knife has failed you," she said. Jace looked at the jagged stump in his grip. "Yeah," he panted. "It does that when you smack it against a brick wall for half an hour. Yield." The word was flat, not cruel. An offer, almost. "There is no dishonor in surviving." He spat blood into the sand. "There's debt in surviving." Her eyes narrowed faintly. "You think your creditors will stop at your corpse? They will sell your bones for fertilizer. Better dirt than a bargaining chip." He let the half-sword fall. It sank into the sand point down. He flexed his empty hands once, shaking out the sting in his knuckles. Mech was probably having a panic-induced aneurysm somewhere under the stands. Serakha's gaze flicked from his bare hands back to his eyes. "You intend to continue? Unarmed?" "Been unprepared my whole life," Jace said. "Might as well stay on brand." Something like respect glinted in her expression. Or maybe that was just sunlight. The drums around the arena picked up, faster now, a war heartbeat. The chant changed, incoherent at first, then dissolving into conflicting rhythms. "Southeast, Serakha! Softblade!" He took a step forward. His body felt like one big complaint. She moved to meet him. The axe came in low. Jace twisted, feeling the blade's wind shred past his stomach. He got inside her reach, slammed both hands around the haft of the weapon, and held on like it was the only solid thing in the universe. Serakha's arms flexed. The muscles across her shoulders knotted as she tried to wrench the axe free. For a heartbeat they stood locked, tendons creaking, sand grinding under their boots. "You cannot win this contest," she hissed. "Didn't plan on winning," he grated, whole body shaking. "Just planned on not losing yet." He shifted his grip, driving his shoulder into her chest plate. The impact shoved her off balance. The axe's edge dug into the sand instead of him. She stumbled. Only for a second, but for the Onyx Tempest, a second off balance was as shocking as spilled blood. They went down together. Momentum, gravity, bad decisions, everything conspired. Jace lunged, Serakha pivoted, the axe shaft became a lever, and suddenly there was no more standing involved. They crashed into the sand in a tangle of limbs and armor, the air blasting out of Jace's lungs. Spots flickered across his vision. Her elbow hammered his jaw. He heard something crack, either bone or pride. He drove his knee into her side in return, not because it would do much, but because not hitting back felt worse. The axe wrenched free and spun away, landing several strides distant. The entire arena gasped as one. Unarmed. Both of them. Serakha rolled, using her greater weight to pin his shoulder. He jerked free, hooked her ankle, flipped them over again. They staggered up, half-crouched, then slammed together once more. For a few wild breaths, there was no technique left. Just fists and knees and stubborn, exhausted defiance. She caught him with a hook that would have knocked most species into orbit. He tasted metal and noise. "You are breaking," she said, breathing hard now too. "Your heart stutters. Your muscles tear." "Yeah," he wheezed. "And you're starting to sound worried." Her lips peeled back. Not quite a smile this time. "I am intrigued." She feinted left, then drove a knee toward his gut. He twisted, took the impact on his hip instead, and used the pain like fuel. His arms looped around her, dragging her down with him. They hit the sand again, rolling. He ended up straddling her hips almost by accident, one of her wrists braced against the ground under his hand. She tried to sit up. He braced his weight through his shoulder and shoved her back. The crowd had gone strangely quiet, the kind of quiet where silence is louder than screams. Serakha stared up at him, chest heaving, braids spread in a halo of white on the stained sand. Her free hand came up, fist aimed for his ribs. He caught it with his other hand, muscles screaming. They froze like that. Locked. He could have headbutted her. Driven an elbow into her throat. There were a dozen brutal tricks from 100 back alley brawls sitting ready in his nerves. He didn't move. Do it, she rasped. Finish. He shook his head, vision pulsing at the edges. No. Anger flashed in her eyes. You think me too weak to survive? I think I'm tired of killing things to pay invoices. His voice came out rawer than he meant. Yield. Her pupils went wide. The word hit her like a blow. No one asked the Onyx Tempest to yield. The Onyx Tempest didn't have that option. Yield, he said again, louder this time, so the entire Crucible could hear. You've proved your point. I've proved mine. Nobody else has to die for ticket sales today. Her pride screamed. He could see it in the tight line of her jaw, the flare of her nostrils, the flex of trapped muscles. The crowd's expectation pressed down on them like a physical weight. No one in this arena was supposed to show mercy. But his hands on her wrists were shaking from effort, not cruelty. His eyes, dark, bloodshot, stubborn, held no pity. Only a fierce, infuriating respect. You are not my enemy, he said, softer now. You're just the last obstacle on a very long bill. A breath shuddered out of her. Something inside the armor of title and training twisted, then cracked. Her voice fractured, then steadied. I yield. The word detonated. The explosion of sound from the stands felt like the world breaking. Screams, shrieks, howls, the clatter of thrown objects, the whine of drones boosting their gain. On the holoscreens, the translation flashed again and again. I yield. Jace's arms nearly gave out from sheer relief. He let go of her wrists, pulled his hands back as if afraid the arena would punish them both for what had just happened. Above them, the announcer choked once, then roared. Victory! By yield and mercy, the human Jace Rowan claims the Crucible. Jace staggered to his feet, legs suddenly made of wet cardboard. He reached down automatically and offered her a hand. Serakha stared at it for a second, as if it were some unfamiliar weapon, then clasped his forearm and let him pull her up. They stood side by side in the center of the ruined sand, bruised, bloody, breathing hard, and utterly, strangely alive. Holoscreens zoomed in, catching the lines of green-black blood on her arm, the smear of red at his mouth, the way their shoulders brushed. The Onyx Tempest has yielded, the announcer stammered, as if trying to convince himself. For the first time in 3 generations, a champion has bowed to another. Banners representing the debt syndicates flickered in agitation. In the noble's balcony, several robed figures were already rising, faces tight with poorly concealed fury. Serakha ignored them. You refused the kill, she said quietly. I told you, he replied, chest still heaving. Killing's bad for my long-term mental health. To his surprise, that drew a huff of air, half a laugh, half disbelief. You have shamed me, she said. Pretty sure I just bled all over your favorite sandbox. Not that. She swallowed, throat working. You have shown mercy in a place built to erase it. They will call it weakness. They will call me weak for yielding. And are you? Her head turned toward him slowly. No. Then let them talk. He winced as his ribs reminded him of their cracked status. If there's one thing humans are good at, it's disappointing crowds. The faintest curve touched the corner of her mouth. The vow stands, she said suddenly, louder now, voice carrying on the amplifiers. Witness, Kharon, I have fallen. The bond is his. Gasps rippled like shockwaves. Holoscreens flared with text, oath claimed. Jace blinked. You were serious about that. Did your species think ours swore before gods and stone for amusement? She asked dryly. Kind of hoped, he admitted. She turned fully then, facing him with ritual precision, despite the sand and blood and the way her armor sat slightly askew. Jace Rowan of Earth, she said, the formal cadence at odds with the wreckage around them. Champion of the Crucible. I, Serakha of Shattered Stone, pledge my oath to you. Life for life. Blade for blade. Path shared, until stone remembers our names. Every drone in the arena caught it. Every broadcast node transmitted it to the furthest orbiting relay. Somewhere beyond the haze of Kharon's sky, a dozen networks recalibrated their evening programming. Jace stared at her like she just tried to hand him a live nuclear core. You realize I don't have a clue what to do with that, he said. Then we will learn, she replied. The med bay smelled like sterile chemicals and hot metal. Machines hummed, lights pulsed, and Audiobook arms whirred in patient circles. Jace lay on a narrow cot stripped to his waist, chest wrapped in pale biofoam that prickled as it hardened. Bruises bloomed across his ribs like alien flowers, greenish around the edges, deep purple in the center. Hold still, the drone hovering over him chirped. Another injector hissed into his shoulder. Cool burn, hot ache, repeat. Feels like you're stapling lightning into my bones, Jace muttered. Regenerative serum will accelerate tissue repair, the drone replied. Complaints noted. Irrelevant. Story of my life. The door sighed open. Light from the corridor silhouetted a tall figure. The drone's status light flicked yellow. Visitor cleared. Jace didn't bother to sit up until the room dimmed slightly, as if trying to accommodate the presence that had just entered. Serakha stepped inside. No armor now, just a long dark tunic belted at the waist, bare arms bandaged where his blade had cut, braids unbound so that white hair fell around her shoulders. Without the battleplate she looked less like a statue carved for war and more like a person, though still undeniably dangerous. He blinked. If you're here to collect on that remains as payment thing, you're a bit late. If I wish you dead, she said mildly, you would not wake to see me. Comforting. She came closer, each barefoot step on the metal floor surprisingly quiet. Her gaze swept over the med wraps, the bruised patterns, the faint tremor in his hands he tried, and failed, to hide. You fought beyond your limits, she said. And you hit like a landing shuttle, he shot back. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Not awkward. Just full. The roar of the celebrating city outside felt very far away. Then Serakha did something that made every hair on Jace's arms stand up. She knelt. No flourish, no theatrical gesture. She simply lowered herself onto one knee beside his cot, bowed her head, and placed her fist over her chest. Jace said brilliantly. That's not necessary. By our bond laws it is. Her voice was steady but quieter than he'd heard it in the arena. I yielded. I swore. Until that vow is dissolved or fulfilled, I stand as your sworn. He stared. You understand I'm just a guy trying not to drown in interest payments, right? Her eyes lifted to his. There was no mockery there. No condescension. You faced me when any rational creature would have fled, she said. You denied the kill when victory demanded it. You broke the Crucible's oldest rule and forced me to choose. Do not speak of yourself as just anything. Jace scrubbed a hand over his face, wincing when his shoulder protested. I didn't spare you to own you. I know, she said simply. That is why the vow has meaning. He exhaled, long and slow. Okay. We're obviously from different universes when it comes to commitment. On Earth, we usually start with dinner first. Her brow furrowed. Food? Yeah. Food talking, not trying to cave each other's ribs in. Get to know you before promising our lives to one another type stuff. Something like amusement flickered across her features. This is a courting ritual? In the basic version, yeah. Serakha considered this gravely. Then I will participate. You don't have to. I will. Her tone brooked no argument. If I am to bind my future to yours, I will know the shape of the path we walk. Jace let his head fall back against the pillow with a half laugh, half groan. You realize I own exactly 0 nice clothes. We will remedy that, she said. Is there a store for idiot humans who accidentally won a warlord in a bet? This is Kharon, she replied dryly. There is a store for everything. The council chamber of the Onyx Courts was a circle of rising tiers, carved from the same black glass as the citadel. Light shivered through veins of luminescent ore, casting the assembled nobles in stripes of blue and violet. Serakha stood alone in the center, battle-scarred hands resting lightly on the pommel of a ceremonial blade planted in the floor. She wore a formal mantle over one shoulder, the onyx sigil at her collar. Above, in carved niches, elders watched her with the tight-lipped expressions of people who smelled change and didn't much care for it. You yielded, intoned Elder Vosk, his voice as dry as old stone. Before the arena, before the debt lords, before off-world feeds. You surrendered the Crucible's sanctity to a mercenary. I surrendered my pride, Serakha said. The Crucible still stands. Murmurs rippled around the chamber. You broke tradition, another elder snapped. Our power rests on the certainty that the arena devours weakness. You showed them hesitation. Mercy. He spat the last word like it was bitter. Serakha's jaw tightened. I showed them choice. The crowd loves blood, Vosk said. They will demand yours next. Then let them come, she replied. They will break their teeth on the same stone you forged me on. You think this human will protect you? Someone scoffed. Serakha's lips curved into a humorless smile. I think he will infuriate you simply by continuing to exist. That earned an unwilling rustle of laughter from the lower tiers. He refused the kill, an elder said. Why? Serakha remembered Jace's hands shaking as he pinned her, the wreckage of his body, the way his voice broke when he said, I'm not your enemy. Because his people. She paused, tasting the words. Because he believes worth is not measured in the corpses you stack behind you. And you? Vosk pressed. Do you believe that now as well? The chamber waited. Serakha thought of the Crucible, of all the fights she'd won, the bodies carried out, the emptiness afterward. Thought of the terrifying, dizzying relief when she said I yield and did not die. I believe, she said slowly, that a path built solely on conquest leads only back to itself. A circle of ash. You speak heresy. I speak observation. She lifted her chin. You use the arena to bind this planet in fear. Today they saw something else bind it instead. A human and a warlady, both standing when we should have fallen, because one refused to kill and the other refused to lie about it. Vosk's eyes were narrow slits of molten gold. And what do you propose, Serakha of shattered stone? She smiled then, small, dangerous, not unlike the one she'd worn when she challenged Jace in the arena. We keep the Crucible, she said. But we change the story it tells. They dressed him like they were wrapping a present for a god. Jace stood on a platform in some onyx tailor's upper room, arms held out as attendants swarmed around him with measuring tapes and shimmering fabric. The tunic they settled on was black shot through with faint silver threads, cut sharp at the shoulders, belted at the waist. You look almost respectable. Mech buzzed approvingly from a corner. It is disconcerting. You say the nicest things, Jace said, tugging at the collar. Feels like it's trying to strangle me. That is simply your guilt at surviving, Mech replied. Your culture's therapy methods need work. From the balcony outside, the sound of crowds reached them, a rising, curious roar. Not the frenzied bloodlust of fight day, but an excited, restless buzz. The city had devoured last night's feeds and now it wanted dessert. A short time later, Jace stepped out onto the high terrace of the Crucible. Kharon's twin suns hung low, heat softened by distance. The arena below had been transformed, no sand disturbed by battle, just gleaming stone and banners, black and silver and a new thread of deep blue that someone had apparently decided represented Earth. Serakha waited at the far end of the terrace. She wore no armor now, but ceremonial regalia, layers of emerald black cloth, crimson cords, the sigil of the Onyx Courts at her throat. Where his bruises were barely hidden, hers were displayed deliberately, unpainted, a statement in mottled purple and green that the champion of Kharon bled and did not break. When he reached her, she inclined her head. "You do not clean up badly, human. You say that like you're surprised." "I am," she said. He snorted. The assembled nobles, gladiators, dead lords, and random extremely wealthy spectators quieted as a low drumbeat began somewhere below. Serakha stepped closer, so their shoulders nearly brushed. "By law and tradition," she said, voice carrying on the amplifiers, "I acknowledge Jace Rowan as my bondmate. Not as master, not as thrall, but as equal. In battle, in fate, and in whatever comes beyond the bones of this world." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, shock, outrage, reluctant admiration. Somewhere, someone shouted a cheer, someone else cursed. Jace cleared his throat. The translator on his collar hummed, "Ready?" He blew out a breath. "Look, I don't have a list of fancy titles. I'm just Jace." A faint ripple of laughter. "But I know this much, yesterday, this arena expected us to tear each other apart for entertainment. Instead, you watched your undefeated champion decide that living with someone is better than killing them to keep a record clean." His heart hammered in his chest, but the words came easier than he expected. "If you want to call that weakness," he said, "fine. Humans have been called worse. We tend to outlive the insults." Serakha's eyes glinted. He turned his head slightly toward her. "So yeah," he said, unceremonious in the face of all that ritual. "I accept. On one condition." The crowd tensed. Even the elders in their balconies leaned in. Serakha arched a brow. "You negotiate with oaths, Softblade? You promise binding future life?" He shrugged. "All I asked for was dinner first. Feels like I should still get that." For one heartbeat, two, she just stared at him. Then, shockingly, she laughed. Not the clipped, controlled huff she gave the council. A full, warm, unrestrained laugh that rolled out over the terrace and bounced off the arena stones. "It will be done," she said. "Dinner first." The northern cliffs of Kharon dropped into a sea of black glass. Once, a comet had slammed into this region, liquefying stone and sand. When it cooled, it left sweeping arches and hollow tunnels through which the wind now howled. Locals claimed the rocks sang. Jace just thought it sounded like a planet remembering it used to be on fire. Serakha had chosen a shelf of stone overlooking the glass sea for their, whatever this was. Courting ritual. Cultural exchange. Awkward post-combat non-date. A low table of carved obsidian held dishes that steamed and hissed faintly, slabs of something that resembled meat, bowls of luminous grain, flatbreads that looked like they might fight back. Jace sat cross-legged on a cushion, carefully not touching anything until she did. He wore the ceremonial tunic still, though he'd undone the collar. His ribs ached more now that the med serum's numbness had worn off. Serakha folded herself opposite him with surprising grace for someone built like an armored tank. A breeze tugged at the loose ends of her hair. "You are staring," she said. "I'm trying to figure out which part is edible," he admitted. "All of it. Define edible. She picked up one of the flatbreads, tore off a piece, and ate it. "Non-lethal. Mostly. That's not as comforting as you think." He tried the grain first. It tasted faintly like citrus and static. "Not bad, honestly." "I reviewed your file," she said after a moment. "Before the match." He swallowed carefully. "Oh good. My greatest hits. Former fleet lieutenant. Commendations for ground actions on Asterian Gate. Dishonorably discharged for striking a superior officer. He was going to abandon civilians in a bombardment zone," Jace said flatly. "I suggested alternative tactics with my fist. Your record said insubordination. Yeah," he snorted. "Records tend to leave out the parts that make the powerful look bad." Something in her expression shifted, recognition, maybe. And after discharge, she continued, induction into the debt program. Contracted fight service in exchange for medical care for Kin, Rowan, Lien. Jace's hand tightened slightly on the cup of spiced water. You read far enough. She breathes easier now, Serakha said. He blinked. You checked? My bondmate's chain is part of my concern now, she replied, as if it were obvious. The clinic reports that her lungs show increased regeneration, thanks to off-world grafting. Your fights have bought her time and air. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The wind in the arches above seemed to soften for a moment. Thank you, he said quietly. I did nothing. You looked, he said. Most people don't. They ate in silence for a while. It was not comfortable, but not hostile either. Sharing space with someone who nearly killed him yesterday should have felt stranger than it did. At one point, the wind shifted, rushing through a narrow stone arch behind them. The rock vibrated, emitting a low, resonant note. Another draft joined it, higher, weaving around the first. Now I get the singing thing, Jace murmured. It is said, Serakha said, that when the stone sings in chords, the gods are listening. And what are they listening for? Truth. He snorted. They picked a bad planet for that. That earned a real smile. Small, but there. You changed something yesterday, she said. Not just my record. He toyed with his cup. Pretty sure your council wants to throw me into a sun. Several do, she agreed. Others are calculating how to profit from you instead. Comforting. She set her cup down. When I was chosen as champion, they told me the Crucible was the spine of our world. Break it, and the rest collapses. I believed them. I became their sharpest blade. And now? She looked out over the glass sea, where the suns were reflecting in fractured, glittering lines. Yesterday I realized the spine that cannot bend will snap, she said. You made me bend. I did not break. Not yet, he said lightly. She shot him a look, but there was no heat in it. Tell me of Earth, she said. Morning in the Crucible felt different with no fight on the schedule. The stands were empty, shadows pooling under the tiers. Sunlight lanced in through broken archways, catching particles of dust suspended in the air. Jace stood barefoot in the sand, wearing simple training clothes, scars old and new mapping his skin. He rolled his shoulders, listening to his ribs complain. You are supposed to be resting, Mech said from the gate, voice heavy with long-suffering despair. This is resting, Jace said. No one's trying to cut my head off. Yet. Serakha dropped from the edge of the stands with a thud, landing easily a few paces away. She wore stripped-down armor, no plates, just reinforced cloth over vital spots, hands wrapped. Her hair was tied back into a single thick braid. Softblade, she said. You are late. Your clocks are weird, he answered. And my handler tried to bribe me with sedatives. I offered a medically recommended dosage, Mech snapped. Jace grinned. See? Bribery. Serakha shook her head once, faint amusement in her eyes. Today, we test a different kind of fight. Let me guess, Jace said. This one also involves me getting punched. Only if you are slow. Then yes. She stepped into stance, weight centered, arms loose, gaze locked. Jace mirrored her as best he could, aware of every protest from abused muscles. They closed. The first exchange was cautious, probing. She moved with the same efficiency as in the arena, but something was missing, the killing edge, the drive to obliterate. Jace wasn't trying to find her throat. He was looking for her rhythm, the way her shoulders shifted before she struck, the tell in her hip when she feinted low and aimed high. You telegraph with your eyes, she said after catching him across the jaw with a fast jab. You hit like a collapsing building, he muttered. Then learn to get out of the way of buildings. They circled again. Mech watched from the sidelines, antennae rigid, clearly unsure whether to interfere or take notes, for Jace's inevitable autopsy. After a while, the line between training and something else blurred. They talked between blows, short phrases, half-jokes, questions about technique. Why twist your wrists like that? Adds torque? Humans are weak, we fake being strong with physics. Show me. He did. She adapted in seconds. In turn, she corrected his footwork, smacked his shin with her instep when he overcommit, made him repeat a simple parry until his arms shook. Again, she said. I am going to detach. He panted, and float away. Again. They went until sweat soaked their clothes and even Serakha's breath rasped faintly. When they finally stopped, Jace dropped to sit in the sand, too tired to care about grit. Serakha lowered herself more gracefully, legs folding under her. Mech scuttled forward with a canteen, thrusting it at Jace. You are going to liquefy. Getting in shape, Jace said. Important new stage in my life, bondmate of terrifying warlady. Serakha tilted her head. You regret it? He thought of the council's stairs, the debt board flickering offline when the clinic finally cleared his account that morning, the message from Lien, voice raspy but laughing as she told him off for almost dying. No, he said. I regret not learning to dodge sooner. Her lips quirked. It happened 2 weeks later. By then, the feeds had named them a dozen things. Kharon's odd pair. The merciful warlady and her human blade. Off-world social media did what it always did, made memes, edited the fight footage with dramatic music, argued about whether humanity had finally gone full HFY, cliché. The Crucible's attendance numbers skyrocketed just because Jace and Serakha sometimes showed up to watch other matches together. She cheered for underdogs now. It made the elders grind their teeth. The attack came at dusk, when the arena was empty. Jace walked the lower corridors alone, cooling down from a solo run through footwork drills. His breath still came quick, sweat cooling on his neck. The quiet felt nice. Too nice, he realized a moment too late. The lights flickered. A door hissed that shouldn't have hissed. He ducked just as the first bolt of coherent energy sliced through where his head had been. It scored a smoking line across the stone. Really? He muttered, rolling behind a support column. We're doing assassins now? 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Armor matte, visors reflective, rifles humming with charge. Their movements were crisp, professional. Syndicate work, he'd bet his newly cleared account. Rowan, one of them said, voice filtered flat. Contract termination. He sighed. You guys know my debt's been paid, right? Asset extraction order stands, the assassin replied. Alive or dead? Preferably dead. Of course it did. The clinic had lost their favorite gladiator and a guaranteed revenue stream. No way they let him walk just because he'd technically fulfilled his side of the contract. You should have brought more friends, Jace said. They fired. The first bolt he dodged. The second grazed his arm, heat singing along the flesh. He hit the floor, rolled, came up with a discarded training spear in his hands, blunt, weighted, not ideal against guns, but better than fingers. Gunfire cracked the air. He used pillars, walls, anything solid as cover, heart pounding. One assassin rounded a corner, too focused on his last known position. Jace swung the spear like a bat, catching them across the back of the knees. As they fell, he drove the butt of the weapon into their helmet hard enough to crack the visor. One, he panted. The other 2 closed in, smarter now. Crossfire angles, trying to box him. He was lining up a desperate sprint when the corridor went dark for half a second, then flared blinding white. Something enormous and furious hit the nearer assassin with the force of a meteor. They slammed into the wall, armor crunching. Their rifle clattered away. Serakha rose from the impact like a nightmare from training vids, armor thrown on hastily over a tunic, eyes burning. She snapped the assassin's rifle in half over her knee and dropped the pieces. You chose my arena, she said, voice low and strangely calm. The last assassin hesitated. Bad move. Jace used that heartbeat to slam the spear into the back of their knee. As they staggered, Serakha crossed the distance in 2 strides and removed their weapon hand at the wrist with a knife Jace hadn't even seen her draw. The corridor filled with screams, smoke, and the metallic scent of burning flesh. Later, when the bodies had been hauled away and the council had been informed, In that order, Serakha stood with Jace on the lowest tier of the empty stands, looking down at the sand. Their signatures trace back to the clinic, she said. Sounds right. Jace leaned on the railing. They never did like delayed payments. They will not touch you again, she said. Gonna outlaw hospitals? If needed. He glanced at her, saw she wasn't entirely joking. That's a lot of upheaval for one broke human. For my bondmate, she corrected. Your enemies become mine. That is the law. Even when those enemies are half your economy? She smiled without humor. Especially then. The feeds loved that part. Footage of the attempted assassination, sliced together from security cams and leaked drones, ran on loop for days. Serakha ripping a rifle in half surged across networks, tagged with captions in a dozen languages. Protective girlfriend energy. Don't OWE money on Kharon. Get you a warlady who. Jace found most of it morbidly hilarious. Mech did not. This attention will get you killed, the handler fretted, pacing their shared planning room. You attract crisis like a magnet. Not my fault everyone here has the conflict resolution skills of a brick, Jace said. Serakha lounged against the wall, arms folded. Conflict is how Kharon breathes. Yeah, well, maybe it's time your planet tried a different hobby, Jace said. Like therapy. She considered that. We do have screaming caverns. Baby steps, he muttered. The elders couldn't quash the story without looking weak. So they did the next best thing. They tried to seize control of it. Within a week, official posters showed Serakha and Jace standing side by side, weapons grounded, under the slogan, Strength without cowardice. Is that supposed to be about mercy? Jace asked. It is supposed to be about you not killing me, Serakha said dryly. They spin it as noble restraint instead of an affront. Hey, at least we're on the same poster now, he said. That's progress. Jace had never walked Kharon's markets without looking over his shoulder for a handler's chain. Now he walked them with Serakha at his side instead. The lower bazaar was a crush of bodies and scents, spice, steam, machine oil, incense, recycled air. Stalls spilled out into narrow lanes, hawking everything from weapon mods to dubious grilled skewers. Above it all, hollow screens played looped highlights of arena bouts. His fight with Serakha showed up every third cycle. Is this wise? Mech muttered, trailing them, eyes flicking everywhere. No armor, no escort, Serakha said. If they mean to accept us, they will do it faster when we stand where they stand. Or stab where they stab, Mech hissed. Jace popped a piece of fried something into his mouth. It tasted vaguely like chicken and battery acid. Relax. Worst case, she uses me as a club. A hush rippled ahead of them as people noticed. A gladiator child pretending to be Serakha froze mid-swing, wooden axe in hand. A merchant dropped a crate. Someone swore softly. Serakha didn't slow. A group of Undertier fighters, all scarred and checker-patterned with cheap tattoos, watched from the edge of a stall. One of them, a lean reptilian with a cracked horn, lifted a hand in a cautious salute. Softblade, she rasped. Jace blinked, then lifted his own hand back. You, surviving? We saw you spare Kharon last cycle, she said. He's a bastard, but he's our bastard. Thanks. He shrugged, uncomfortable. Didn't feel like murdering him for missing a parry. The fighter grinned, flashing sharp teeth. We bet on you now. Further in, a group of children spotted them. One tiny, six-limbed creature marched right up, chin bouncing around chest height on Jace. Did it hurt? The child demanded. Did what hurt? Jace asked. When she hit you. Small finger pointing at Serakha. Yes, Jace said. Absolutely. Deeply. Extensively. The child looked at Serakha in awe. Can you show me? No, Serakha and Jace said together. Laughter rippled through the surrounding crowd. The tension eased. Someone started slow clapping. Someone else whistled. It wasn't acceptance, not fully. But it was a start. They ended the day where they'd begun it weeks before, on a balcony, looking out over Kharon's jagged skyline as the twin suns slid toward the horizon. Below, the Crucible glowed in the falling light, its massive walls etched in gold-orange. Drones traced lazy patrols overhead. For once, no one shouted. Serakha leaned on the railing, braids hanging forward. "They will push back harder," she said. "The Council. The Debt Lords. Those who profit from every broken body." "Yeah," Jace said. "That's how they work. You poke their food source, they bare teeth. Your people face this? Different names, same game," he said. "Back home, we call it the system. It does not enjoy being told no. You defied it anyway. Wasn't a grand plan," he said. "Just one bad call after another, lined up in a row, and somehow I ended up here instead of in a mass grave. Do you regret it?" He thought of Lien's message again. Her smile. The absence of the ragged cough between words. Thought of the way the market crowd had laughed with them, just for a moment. Thought of the council chamber, elders grinding their teeth while a new story took root underneath them. "Not today," he said. She studied him in profile. "You changed the Crucible," she said. "You changed me." He shook his head. "You changed yourself? I just messed up in the right direction." Her lips curved. "Humility looks strange on you. Arrogance looks better? Exhaustion does," she said, eyeing the way he sagged against the rail. "I'm very good at that one," he said. They stood in companionable silence for a while, listening to the wind between the spires and the distant murmur of a city trying on a new story, seeing if it fit. "You know," Jace said eventually, "where I come from, they like to tell these big dramatic tales about humanity. How we're special. How we always win. Humanity, hell yeah, that sort of thing." Serakha tilted her head. "They claim they are destined to conquer? Something like that." He smiled faintly. "But where it actually matters? It's quieter. It's people making stupid promises and then trying not to break them. It's someone saying I yield in a place that told them they'd die if they did." She considered that. The glass sea in the distance caught the last light, shattering it into 1,000 fragments. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "your people's story is not so different from mine." "How so?" "We were taught that strength is in never bending." Her fingers curled against the stone. "Yesterday I bent. And you're still here," he said. "Yes." She smiled, genuine and a little dangerous. "And so are you." He bumped his shoulder lightly against hers. "Guess we're stuck with each other now." She bumped back, just enough to make him brace his feet. "Stone remembers oaths," she murmured. "Let it remember this one." Below them, in the crucible where so many had fallen, banners caught the evening wind, black and silver, streaked now with a new thread of blue. A human color, on a world that had never bothered to learn the name of his home before. Somewhere, stories were already being told. About the warlady who yielded, and the human who refused to strike. About a planet built on violence, learning, slowly, painfully, that there was something more terrifying than death, change. Jace looked out across the fractured light and felt, for the first time in a long time, like the future might be something he could walk into on purpose instead of being dragged. "Not bad," he said quietly. "For a day's work." Serakha's laugh was softer now, threaded with something that might one day be called love. "Rest while you can, Softblade," she said. "Tomorrow, we train." "You mean we?" Her hand found his, fingers strong and warm. "Yes," she said. "We." Kharon's sun slid below the horizon, leaving the world washed in the deep blues of approaching night. The wind between the stone arches began to sing, low, and strange and new. Two figures stood at the edge of that music, one human, one not, bound by a vow neither had expected to keep, and ready to start writing whatever came next. The end. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one.